would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Friday edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker, licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please do not hold that against me. It's going to be a great one for you today, folks. I mentioned this interview, I think, either earlier this week or late last week. This is going to be with Whitney Nicely. Whitney is a real estate investor in Tennessee. She specializes in Knoxville. So we're going to spend some time talking about her experiences. I'll let her introduce herself when the interview gets started. But before we jump into it, I just wanted to also remind everyone, head on over to therebelbroker.com. Click on the big red button at the top of the page titled Take the Survey to Support the Show. You're going to accomplish two things by doing that. You want to do that as soon as possible. You're going to, first of all, help the show grow, which is a big goal of mine, and you're the only folks who can help me do that. And second, you'll be getting yourself in the drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card. So don't miss out on your chance for that free $50 Amazon gift card. Make sure to enter today. It'll ask you for your email address twice. Use the same email address both times, and then simply answer a handful of demographic questions, and you are all set. All right, so without further ado, I want to go ahead and jump into the interview. And I guess before it gets going, I think one thing I should mention is if you're looking for a strategy or if you're looking for an approach that or a person who embodies something, I think what Whitney really brings to the table on this one is this mentality that lets her turn a social media approach and just a bubbly personality trait into success rocket fuel. So the way she does things may not work for everybody, but she's absolutely going to have some valuable things to tell us about things that she's managed to accomplish. And so much of her great success is just putting herself out there and just getting involved in doing it. So I won't spoil it anymore for y'all. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this interview with Whitney Nicely. I'd like to welcome to the show Whitney Nicely. She is going to be sharing with us a few things that I have been very passionate about on the show in the past, and it's kind of a neat crossroads thing where I've talked a lot about, to be honest, a market I know nothing about from a firsthand standpoint in Tennessee. She's not from the exact area that I'm super passionate about, but that doesn't mean we can't hear what she has to say. A lot of you who've been listening for a long time know that I'm big into Chattanooga and that Memphis has had great numbers, but we're going to get some insights from Whitney. But to start it off, I'd love for Whitney to give us sort of an overview. Let us know a little bit about you, what you're doing now, and sort of where you're at.
Hey, y'all. My name is Whitney Nicely, and I am the broker for Whitney Buys Houses, but I do not list. I don't do regular real estate things. I just invest with a license.
Okay.
So I buy land, houses, and apartments.
So what made you choose to do that? That's an interesting thing, right? I get that question from time to time. Should I get my real estate license if I only want to do my own thing? And what was it that really helped make that decision for you?
Well, it's kind of a personal thing. Whenever I would break up with a boyfriend, I would put myself into some sort of school and come out with a certification. Mm-hmm. So I am a broker, I'm an auctioneer, I'm a general contractor, and I'm a notary. Oh, and I am a certified underground miner.
Wow. So that's 5 boyfriends total?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
Well, I just collect licenses. I was collecting licenses, and then I started collecting houses.
Probably much more profitable in the whole collecting houses thing.
For sure. A lot more fun, too. When I was a little girl, I used to collect scarves. So I've gradually upgraded my games.
Well, good for you. And just to sort of calibrate everyone to a little bit more, we were talking before we started really officially starting the show. Give the folks an idea of just how far out of school you are, because I think the idea of starting as young as you are might shock a lot of folks.
I graduated college during the last downturn. So I graduated from UTK in 2007.
Okay. So you got to watch it all collapse.
I did. My family has 4 dump truck companies, and when I graduated, I went to work for the company. That's where I got certified to be a miner. Mm-hmm. And I also, I watched all of it kind of crumble because as a dump truck company, our bread and butter was still real estate. We wanted people to be building houses so we could deliver gravel.
Right.
And when we weren't delivering any gravel, we were sitting around looking at each other, and I was like, well, this isn't any fun. Why'd y'all want me to come work here?
All right. And so what would you consider your sort of christening into real estate that sort of started your empire for you?
In 2009, so 2 years after I've been out of school, right in the thick of it, my mom has always had rental houses, and one of her first rental houses kind of came available. I was living at home out of college. I was probably 24 at the time. And so we kind of gently kicked her tenants out and decided to flip the house. Just because nothing else was going on. We had lots of free time. So we flipped the house, and I fell in love with the process. I fell in love with hiring the contractors, and I fell in love with the house. So on my 25th birthday, I moved into that house. So nobody made any money, but that's really what was like, you know what, I want to do this. And then that was 2009, and it took me until 2014 to take the training wheels off and flip a house by myself without mom and dad. Okay.
And did you still live in that first house?
I did. I lived in it until last December.
Oh, okay.
I lived there for about 9 years.
Okay.
So they really didn't make any money on that flip.
Yeah, family costs a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so calibrate us to your universe right now. You had that first experience. You were hooked and decided to move forward on your own. Before we sort of maybe look back and see if we can't tease out any ideas in terms of how you really managed to make those first deals come together on your own. Where are you right now? Because I read down the list of stuff you've got, and given what I know about when you graduated, when you got that first home, and where we are now chronologically, you've gotten a lot done.
I sure have. I really started getting into lease options, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in 2014.
I love lease options.
I do too. Oh, they're my bread and butter.
Nobody wants to do them. Everyone's afraid of them.
I love them. I am absolutely obsessed with them.
All right.
And
share your love of lease option with us.
Well, in 2014, I did 14 lease options.
Wow.
And in 2015, I bought 3 apartment complexes. And when I first did lease options in 2014, I assigned most of them. I only kept 2.
Okay.
And then in 2015, I kept all of them and didn't assign anything. So I went from, well, let's back up the bus a little bit even further. In 2013, I bought a piece of land. And because I watched mom invest, and I knew I needed to invest, but I didn't know the process. And I had a license. I was a real estate agent, but I had one listing. It was really easy. I thought they were all going to be easy, and it's just not like that.
Right.
So I didn't ever get another listing, even though it was easy. But I knew I wanted to be an investor. So I bought a piece of land so I could see the settlement statement and I could feel, the anxiety. But I only spent like $1,200 on it, and I bought an acre in a developed subdivision that had died. And my tract actually came with a deeded boat slip. So
wow.
Everybody doesn't buy an acre for $1,200 and a deeded boat slip.
Right.
So that was really my first, okay, I can do this. I own land. I'm going to do it bigger and better. So then later in 2013, I went to an auction and bought 2 houses and another piece of land because that's how my mom buys.
What kind of auction was it?
It was an absolute auction.
Okay. So it was it wasn't a, courthouse steps auction on foreclosed properties or anything like that. This was like the auctions where you're going to have to pay a percentage over and all this other kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, that first piece of property with the boat slip, it was at a foreclosure auction.
Okay.
And I paid $1,200. And when we got to closing, there was something on there about $69,000. And I was like, wait a second, hold on. And they were like, no, that's what the last person had it financed for.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's the only foreclosure auction that I've been to and bought anything. I actually don't like the F word. I try to stay away from it. So then I got absolute auctions, and I'm an auctioneer. So I love mom and pa auctions. Mm-hmm. And my brother and I went and bought one house. And then there was another auction like 2 weeks later at the same company. We bought another house and a piece of land. So that second piece of land We bought it for $1,500, and it was the one that really flipped my trigger that I knew I was going to be able to make some money. Mm-hmm. So we got that land, and it took some time because I still didn't know what I was doing. We rented one of the houses just kind of on accident, and some of our buddies just needed a place to go. So we rented one of the houses, and then the other house, oh, that was a nightmare. Turned out the foundation was bad, and we had to replace 3 sides of it. So I took some big bumps and bruises on that second house. But the second piece of land that we bought, 3, 4, or 5 months later, I'm downtown flirting with the codes inspectors, just trying to see what's going on, taking them donuts and, just doing my thing. And they were like, hey, Whit, that land that you bought over there on Prosser Road? And I was like, oh, yeah, we'll do something with that eventually. Ha, ha, ha. And they were like, no, you own more than you think you do. Last time you were here after you left, we started checking you out. And it turns out you own that driveway too. And I was like, how can you own a driveway? And they were like, well, the city used to have a road there, and they decided they didn't want to service that road anymore. So they turned it into a driveway, and they gave the right side to you and the left side to your neighbor. And I was like, well, he's driving on it. And they were like, well, then you could rent him the driveway for rights to drive on it to access the back part of his land. And I was like, you can do that?
Yeah. That's one of the goofy, weird real estate stories they tell you when you early in your career, usually, like the stuff that they tell you, but that never really happens. It's amazing that you just stumbled onto that.
It was just so weird. But the coolest part was my neighbor's like a Fortune 500 company, like a really big deal. Yeah. So I just went bebopping into his office, talked to the secretary, and I was like, I need to talk to whoever's in charge of the real estate. And they're like, yeah, okay, whatever. So I went through the process, got an appointment. He met me over there, and I was like, yes, so I own the right side of the driveway. And he was like, no, little real estate girl, that's not possible. You can't just own half the driveway. Mm-hmm. And I was like, it's cool, have it surveyed. And he was like, okay, whatever, talk to you never. And I waited about 2 weeks, and he called me, and he was like, yes, Miss Nicely, we had just found out that you own the right side of the driveway that we've been using since 1992, and we would like the opportunity to rent it from you. And I was like, oh, really? For how much? And they said $250. And I was like, quick math. I have $1,500 invested in this. They want $250. I've had it for 6 months at this point. And I was like, would you pay me back rent for the time that I've owned it? And they were like, yeah, sure. And I was like, will you pay my taxes and maintain the driveway? And they're like, sure, no problem. So by the time we signed our contract, our lease agreement, I got all of my money back. I've got no overhead. I've got nothing. I mean, totally in and out and done. And I was like, this is awesome.
Wow. That's
so
amazing.
I wanted to do that like on super speed. And that's when I got into houses. But this past February, my brother rented that land. So I rented the driveway a couple years ago. This February, my brother rented the land for $500 a month. So now we're getting $750 a month off a $1,500 investment.
Wow. That's freaking amazing. And where did this was in Knoxville?
It's in the city of Knoxville. It's industrial land.
Now, see, this is stuff that I don't think, and this is the kind of thing that folks don't get because they're so tempted by the headlines about markets like mine, like San Francisco, San Jose, Los Angeles, New York, Miami. They don't realize that you just spent, I'm sure you've done the math on your return on investment, which is just the kind of numbers people would expect to only hear in a dream. Granted, it sounds like you've had some like lucky stars. You sound like the kind of person who I should have you send me several large locks of your hair for luck, just in case any of that stuff rubs off. But this is the type of thing where the potential growth on so many of these things is so just above what you could get in these more competitive marketplaces. It's just amazing.
For sure. And the thing is, I'm lucky, but I'm also like out there every day keeping it stirred up.
Sure. Right. What do people say? Luck is 80% showing up, right?
I don't know. I thought it was preparation and opportunity.
Well, it's showing up, right? Sometimes it sounds like you just showed up and just doing it for the motions of doing the stuff.
I just flapped my mouth. When I started buying houses, everybody I was, in these boot camps and seminars with, they were so stressed out over marketing, and some of them have been trying for years and years and years. And I brought leads on houses I wanted to buy to the boot camp.
Yeah.
Because I just opened my mouth and told people what I wanted. And, I'm also young. Kids, they've got no pride. They've got nothing. They don't know that they're supposed to act cool, calm, and collected. And I'm kind of like that in my investing. I'm like, hey, I'm here to buy something. Anybody got anything for sale?
Yeah.
Whereas, what I have learned is that most adults think there needs to be like some strategy or something to it. But if you'll just open up and like confess that you want to buy houses, suddenly houses appear.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And I like the approach. I mean, one of the things that I like to complain about anyway, when I'm in a complaining mood, is just how much bull gets wrapped around so much of what happens in this business. And if folks were just a little bit more upfront about what they're shooting for and what they want to get out of it, things would go a lot smoother, and potentially there'd be a lot more winning for everybody involved.
There totally would. Everybody wants to really overcomplicate real estate, and it's not really that difficult. You got something you want to sell? I got something I want to buy. Can we get together? Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Yes, no, go on.
All right. So before we get too far away from the first time you mentioned it, I'd like to circle back a little bit on your lease options.
Okay.
So, and I know you've mentioned that you have sold a ton of them and you've kept a bunch of them. Did you have in your mind, this is how I want to do lease? Because what's funny is, for someone who's brand new to the business, for you to say you love lease options is odd, because I know real estate agents who've been in the business for 15 years who are scared to death of lease options, primarily because they don't get what they are, I think. But I have to spend a lot of time educating.
It's the most perfect solution to anything. I mean, when I explain lease options to people, it's not weird. If you have a house and you want to rent it to somebody, even if you have a mortgage on it, nobody thinks that's weird. Nobody thinks it's weird to have a tenant in a house that you have a mortgage on and you don't live in it.
Right.
On the other hand, if you have a mortgage or you don't have a mortgage and you decide you want to sell a house, nobody thinks that's weird either.
Yeah.
So with one piece of paper, I can rent it and buy it at the same time. Like, there's nothing more magical in real estate than lease options.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've one of the things in my market that I try to do is leverage the lease option. Now, of course, my market is so competitive in terms of being a seller's market. I'd have to figure out some way for me to be the only option, because it's so much easier for a seller to simply say no and take the person who's bringing 50% cash. So for me, the leverage becomes in finding folks who aren't on the MLS. You have to chase the folks who aren't actively trying to sell their property. You gotta get at them in a way where it's an option for them, where you can at least have time to explain to them how sexy and awesome lease options are. Do you get a feeling that it's sort of the same in your market, or do you get a different vibe?
I get a different vibe. I really go after two different kinds of people. I go for tired landlords, whether they planned on becoming a landlord or they accidentally became a landlord.
Mm-hmm.
I can talk to them all day long and buy as many houses as I want to.
Okay.
Because people just get tired of tenants and toilets.
Right.
I love it. It sounds like money to me.
Okay.
And the other people that I really like are inherited properties. So, you grew up in Tennessee, you moved off to California, you're not coming back over here to deal with, mom and pa's little dinky house. Well, hello.
Yeah. How do you find those? How do you find the inherited properties?
I do a lot on Facebook, just kind of mouthing around about I buy houses.
Really?
Not Facebook ads, not anything else. I've systematically developed 12 different templates to use on Facebook that keeps people entertained and educated on the kinds of houses I want, the kinds of sellers I want, and how I buy. So that if I talk to 5 or 6 people, I'm going to look at 5 or 6 houses, and I make every seller that I talk to 3 different offers. So I don't need to talk to 100 people. I'm going to make 30 offers and not even try hard.
Right. So it sounds to me like, unlike I am much more of a numbers guy. Like, I would approach, you and I would go after the exact same people, but we would get to them in completely different ways. Mm-hmm. You have totally leveraged the whole social butterfly aspect of the business to get people into your orbit. At least that's the way it sounds to me. Do you think that sounds accurate?
Yeah, well, I look at it a little bit. I am very open and like honest and like real estate's my thing. But I don't know exactly how I've done this, but I've got kind of a hands out Jesus approach to come on, tell me your real estate sins. Let me see if I can fix them.
Sure. So maybe this is the time to bring up that you actually offer sort of a mentoring / coaching thing.
Oh yeah. Yes, I do.
Where would you send people to look more into that?
You can go to whitneynicely.com/group. And I've got a Facebook group where I'm actually like every day I didn't today. I shouldn't say that. I do a live feed. I post up different topics. I do little mini challenges. I've got my program is the Real Estate Rockstars. And so the group is Become a Real Estate Rockstar.
Okay. Cool. Well, good. And if they search on your name, if they get to Facebook, that's another way to find you as well. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
If you type my name in, there's going to be tons of stuff that pops up.
Okay, good. So again, what I'd like to do also is just sort of get an idea. If you're going to put together, what do you consider to be the important elements in your lease options? Do you fuss over that, or do you really just sort of just fill it out and go with it? Is it different every time, or are there things that you really want to make sure are part of any lease option you put together?
No, I want to make sure that I'm winning 2 out of 3 ways. And I try to let my sellers win 2 out of 3 ways. Most people, when we think about real estate, we're thinking like stocks, buy low, sell high. Well, that doesn't always work, right? And there's lots of other ways to make money in real estate besides just buying and selling. There's renting, there's option fees, there is selling, but you can spread lots of money out if you've got different opportunities. So I focus on the purchase price, of course, but I can buy an over leveraged house. And if I get enough time, I get 10 or 15 years to pay it off. I'm going to pay down what's owed on it and have time for the market to appreciate to where they cross in the night and suddenly I'm in the money again. Yeah.
Now, what's the term? You've mentioned 10 to 15 years. Is that a typical term that you use for your lease option?
I'm anywhere between 5 and 10 years.
Okay.
I did the only one time out of 54 deals that I've done in lease options, one person called and said, "Hey, will you owner finance my house? I don't want any interest and I haven't been paid this year, so we really don't need payments for another couple months until January. I just need you to help me get my tenants out."
Okay.
I was like, okay. And they said, "We'll give you, 15 or 20 years or however long it's going to take you to pay this thing off." And I was like,
at 0% interest.
No interest. And I got it in August. And so when I mentioned tired landlords, these people had her best friend's daughter living in the house. And she brought her boyfriend, and then they'd had a baby, and then they lost their jobs. And then, she couldn't kick them out because they were practically family.
Right.
But if she sold me the house, she could blame it on me. And, I could be buying the house and I could start making her payments and she wouldn't have to fix whatever they broke.
Right.
So it was a win-win for her. She got cash flow coming in. She got to save face with the family. I'm the evil witch, and it's all good. On the flip side of that, I bought a really awesome house for 15-year terms with no interest, no money down, and I didn't have payments from August until January.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, that's great stuff.
So the win, she's got lots of wins in there. I've got lots of wins. But if you're going to win 2 out of 3 ways, you got to win either on the purchase price, the down payment, or the monthly payment.
Yeah.
And most of the time I don't put any money down, or I put $100 down, or, whatever my attorney says I need to.
Right.
And I get 90 days before I have to make my first payment.
And what's the price range of the properties we're talking about that you tend to work with?
100 to 150.
Okay.
Our curve really becomes a cliff at 150.
Okay. And would you say that's the average price overall, or would you say that tends to hover a little bit below average or above average for your market?
No, I think that's a really sweet spot. In fact, they're only pulling permits for 225 and up houses right now, and our market doesn't support that. So I don't know who's going to be moving into those houses that they're building.
Yeah. Well, that's what's funny is we even come back to a point that we've made in previous shows where the price of homes that are being built is just not in line with
it's not
with what's going on. In fact, what was it? The last stat I remember seeing was new homes that are being built today are typically 25% above the market of an existing home, whereas historically that number's been 6% above. So there's this huge new jump in what you're paying for a new home versus an existing home that I don't get, and I don't understand where they think all this is going to come from.
They're playing with magic math, I guess. And
yeah.
I didn't learn Common Core math, so I don't know how to do that.
Okay. So let's go ahead. I'd love to get your... one of the good things I love about talking to people who are doing this sort of thing in other areas is to just sort of get the ground truth. Now, it sounds like you would be a huge advocate of business in Knoxville in terms of getting returns on investment. You've also mentioned, while you're not really familiar with Chattanooga, which is for some strange reason sticks in my head, and I'm determined at some point to get myself over to that city. You do have some experience in Memphis, or am I mistaken?
I went to Memphis for a commission meeting one time, but I think that's the only time I was there. Oh, I went through there to get to the casinos in Mississippi.
So no investing, jumping into the Memphis market.
Everybody, the market, the media, all the gurus, and I don't know who these people are, but they're always talking about Memphis because you can buy cheap stuff, and they're talking about Nashville because it's a big boom town. Mm-hmm. And as long as they're talking about them, everybody's leaving Knoxville alone, which means I have my own little sandbox to go play in.
Right. And now, was Knoxville a choice for you, or that's just where you happened to find yourself?
I was born and raised in Knoxville. Okay. And I just love it, and I know it. And, my mom already kind of had a honey hole. So I leapfrogged over her honey hole, went and found my own, but now I've come back and started investing in her neighborhood too.
Okay. All right. Well, I think what we're going to do right now is take a really quick break, but when we come back, what I'd like to talk to you about is where you think the market's going. We can talk about Knoxville specifically, or maybe even a little bit more broadly, but I'd love to get your insights on that. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right. Aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. All right, everyone, welcome back. We are talking with Whitney Nicely, a very nice person from Knoxville, Tennessee, living up to her last name, sharing a lot of really cool stuff relating to her local market, and also the fact that she's putting herself out there as someone who's a mentor and someone who can help bring you along with some great approaches to real estate that have clearly worked for her. You can find her on Facebook. You can search Whitney Nicely, but we'll also share her link again before the end of the show. And as promised, what I'd like to do now is get an idea from you on an idea of where you think the market is headed. What, do you think it's just we're still heading for boomtown, or are you kind of preparing for some other occurrences?
So since 2014, in 3 years, and really in about 2 years, I went from no houses to 19 houses.
Right.
So you don't need decades to get up to 19 houses, right?
Right.
But you do need to have something like you were talking about. You need to have something that's going to make you special to be able to make that big jump from nothing to a lot. Mm-hmm. And lease options is, what I chose to get me there. Now,
what percentage of that 19, were those all lease options, or how you acquired those?
No, I bought the 2 at the auction.
Okay.
But then,
Okay.
Oh, no. Okay. So I got 2 at the auction, and then I got 13. What does that take us up to 14?
That'd be 15, right? Two at auction.
13. Yeah. Okay.
So
So 15. And then I paid, I've started investing in Georgia. My husband lives in Georgia, and I bought 3 houses this year in Georgia for $12,000 total.
Wow.
Total. Not each, total.
And these were auctions?
No, they were just houses that I found. I bought 2 of them off my yard boy because I was just out talking to him about buying houses.
Wait a minute. Hit that one more time. In Georgia, you bought 2 homes for $12,000.
3 houses.
3 houses for $12,000.
Yes.
So I just went car shopping for my oldest son this weekend, and the cheapest car I could find was $12,000. So what happened there? Are these on like a cleanup site? Is there nuclear waste buried under them? What's the?
No, I already sold one on a lease option for $12,000.
Wow.
So I'm in the money on the others. And okay, so what happened was I just mouth and talk a lot. So I was out talking to my yard boy, and I said, hey, I'm in town. I'm looking to try to buy some houses. That's what I do back up in Knoxville. You know anybody that has any they want to get rid of? And he was like, I got 13. I was like, you got 13 houses? And he said, yeah. I said, cool.
Your yard boy
get
has
rid of
13
some?
houses.
Yeah. I said, you want to get rid of some? He was like, I could get rid of 2 of them. So I went and looked at them. I put them under contract that day. And the first one, okay, so the pretty one that I bought from him had been on fire. And it was, a burnt out house. So I put it up on Craigslist for $15,000. I was buying it from him for $6,000.
Mm-hmm.
All right, $6,000. I put it up on Craigslist for $15,000. I put a sign in the yard. About 4 weeks later, the neighbor called, and they were like, "Hey, what if we give you 12?" And I said, "Well, how much can you put down?" And they said, "We'll give you $5,000 down and pay you $300 a month until we pay off the balance of 7."
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Okay, sounds good to me for a burnout house." So I called my seller and I was like, okay, so instead of doing $6,000 over a couple years because he was going to owner finance it for me, I said, how much will you just take in cash? And he said, I'll take $3,000. So I took the 5 that they gave me and I used 3 of it to pay off the house. So I'm literally in this one with no money.
Whitney, this is the moment.
Are you still with me?
I'm still with you, but this is the moment where when I was a much younger fella, and I'd be sitting in front of my TV at 2:00 in the morning, watching. And this, since you are such a recent graduate of college, this name will probably mean nothing to you. But for those of you who are a little older, who saw the Carlton Sheets commercials for real estate investment without any money and all this other kind of stuff in the olden days, see, that's this is what you call the I don't even know what to call it. I've been doing this stuff since 1988, and I've never heard of this happening in real life before. It's actually absolutely mind blowing.
Okay, so this is where we are, right? So I'm cashing out my seller for $3,000. I've got $2,000 left in my pocket,
right,
and they still owe me $7,000.
Right.
Okay, so I called my seller like after that one closed, and I was like, hold on. I've got this other house from him for $6,000 on owner finance. And I was like, what would you take for it on cash? And he was like, that one's in worse shape. It's in worse shape than the burnout house.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep that in mind. He was like, it's in worse shape than that. So I'll probably just take like, $2,500 on it. And I was like, all right, done. So I had $2,000 that those people had already given me. I put $500 out of pocket, but these people are paying me $300 a month. So 2 months later, I had all my money back on that one too.
Mm-hmm.
And that one is a crack house. So you're standing in it and you can see outside from the cracks in the floor and the cracks in the wall and the ceiling. I mean, it's like an egg. It's cracked.
Okay, so let me just suggest that you never refer to it as the crack house again, because in most cities, if you say crack house, people aren't going to think you're talking about cracks in the wall. Just a little something to throw out there for you, Whitney. I'm trying to give you the inside scoop. Well, that is stunning to me, and it's a list of stunning things, Whitney. It's first of all, it just goes to show you, just being right up front and with people and tell them what you do and what you're interested in accomplishing can do amazing things. I'm not sure I would have brought up buying houses from the yard boy myself, but now I regret having spent the last 25 plus years not mentioning this to more yard boys.
There's lots of people overall millionaires. They're wearing overalls and they just got money coming out of their pockets.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, at least here in the South there are. I don't know if y'all got them in California or not.
Yeah, we have those. But they're usually not doing my lawn. They're usually, living in, they're running around in raggedy old clothes, but they're living in that $2.8 million house over on the hill.
Nope. We got them out here working. So that second house that I bought from him, I put a picture on Facebook and I said, hey, I just bought this one with cash. Actually, none of my own money. And from that post, somebody saw that post and sent me a message and said, hey, I got another one you can buy.
Wow. So and what's great is all of these leads, everything that you're getting has absolutely nothing to do with you paying somebody to put word out for you. This is you just talking to folks, leveraging off of Facebook that just sounds like gangbusters. And how many folks do you have sort of subscribing to you on Facebook or friended up with you on Facebook?
I think I have 4,000 friends. I don't know half these people.
And would you say most of them are in your marketplace? You're right there in Knoxville?
No, people all over the country follow me because I just talk about all this stuff all the time and people are interested in it. And, the reason I brought these little dinky houses up is because, you asked, what am I doing now? I've spent the last 2.5 years buying nice, regular houses. Mm-hmm. And I just don't want to get myself tied up in one of those right now because I really think this time next year, I'll come through and buy a house, a regular, nice, pretty brick rancher every week. And I just don't think the market is there for it right now. So I'm just kind of, trying the other side of the business instead of the nice regular stuff where I would live. I'm trying the lower end and it's pretty fun. So
are you saying the implication I kind of got from what you just said is that it sounds like you're thinking the more mainstream homes are going to be going for less in a year? Is that?
Not going for less, but I think they'll be more interested in a lease option.
Oh, I get you. Okay.
In a year. Right now, you can put anything on the market and it'll pretty much sell.
Yeah.
Unless there's something really wrong with it. And I got, in 2015, I flipped 6 houses and planned a wedding and I just got kind of burnt out on it.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying not to flip anything right now. I'll do a lipstick on a pig. Like I flipped our triplex one at a time, but it wasn't anything like major.
Right.
It was just little stuff. So I'm really trying to just kind of squirrel away and, nut up my money so that when it turns, I'm ready to start getting at it.
And when you say turns, so I'm trying to get at where you think things are going to go. So when you think things are going to turn next, do you think they're going to turn with real estate prices going up, or do you think they're going to turn with prices going down?
I'm not really sure, but with, like we were talking about the prices of new build going up, I think there's going to be a lot of transition where people that are in, maybe after the last crash, in 11, 12, maybe even 13, they bought a little house and that's fine. But as things start to improve and banks start handing out more money, I think these women especially are going to be looking at these, 225 houses that you and I may think are overpriced, but they're going to say, no, honey, I think we can do it.
Yeah.
But, maybe they're not going to be able to get rid of this old one, or maybe they're going to need something to do with it. And that's when I'll be able to come in and do a lease option on it. Because I just feel like there's going to be a transition. And I don't know that it's actually going to be a bottom out, not next year, but I mean, it's coming.
Yeah.
But I mean, it, just like the rain, it's going to happen.
Okay. And do you think any of your holdings right now are threatened by that? Or do you feel comfortable that if something horrible does happen, the kinds of properties that you hold and your rental income will stay pretty much insulated from that? Or is there anything that you're thinking in terms of if you start to see certain signs, you're going to prep or maybe change your strategies at all?
No, I think I knock on wood. I think I'm pretty good because I've got 5 or 10 year contracts on these houses. So I've got enough time to wait out a slump. Also, if I have somebody in a house and they're renting it from me, I don't think any of my sellers are going to come back and say, oh no, kick them out while I'm making their mortgage payment.
Yeah.
I think if anything, they'll weather the storm with me.
I think you could make an argument that your lease option is actually a better protection.
Yeah, it is. It is, absolutely. And there's always going to be people that are looking for a lease option, buying and selling. There's always going to be people who are just in some sort of transition. Even if half the country isn't filing bankruptcy, somebody is. Somebody's going to have that on their credit, and they're going to need a lease option to rebuild their credit and then buy the house.
Right.
It doesn't always have to be that the whole market is doing it. It could just be that this family or that family needs me.
Yeah. God, that is amazing. And it sounds like you have managed to find a corner for yourself that just works ridiculously well for you.
Yes, I have a lot of fun with it. I really do. And I think that shows. If you go in and you're desperate to get a listing, you're desperate to get a house, you're desperate to do, something, even if you got $100,000 and you got to spend it in 90 days because you're doing a 1031, you're desperate to buy something, people can smell that and they just don't like it. Whereas, I'm good.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it. I'm cool. I can go buy something else.
Okay. So let's take a second and look back on the Whitney Nicely experience. And try to identify, say, one or two things that if you were sitting with someone who was just really hesitant and really tired of where they are and maybe thinking, I want to do something where I'm more in control of my life. I like the idea of real estate. And, I get the feeling that your advice would really have very little to do specifically with real estate. But what one or two things would you say what makes Whitney so successful that's maybe more of a choice that person can make in how they do things on a day-to-day basis?
Well, you got to remember that you don't need credit and you don't need money to go buy houses. You can go find sellers in your market who are having a problem. They're in pain. And if you can think outside the box and offer a solution that nobody else is, you will be able to pick up that house and take that problem away from them. Yeah. And that's really where I operate. I help people with problems. Yeah. If you don't have a problem, I can't help you. But there's lots of people out there who do. And as long as you're going into it to actually help somebody, that's when people are like, oh, yeah. And then you need to talk to my cousin, and you need to talk to my mom, and you need to talk to my best friend. And I'm going to give everybody your phone number. And then you've bought 5 houses from one contact.
Yeah. And maybe it's your lawn boy.
Maybe it's your yard boy. Exactly.
Well, and I think and one thing I'd want to point out here, right, is we're talking numbers. When we go over stats here on this show, we're often talking about much crazier numbers, right? The average sales price in San Francisco being 1.2 million and all that kind of stuff. And, multiple offers on just about every property that comes up. I think it's important also to say this may be something that sounds a lot easier to do where Whitney is because of the way things are priced there. But if you're someone who is this dedicated to being a problem solver, because that's really the number one thing she brings to the table, she's a creative, out-of-the-box problem solver, you can apply that anywhere and make it profitable for you, because there's an awful lot of folks who don't think that way. They don't want an open box or a clean canvas to work from to try to come up with a solution. They want the checklist that everyone else already uses, right? And that's not really where you find your solutions, but you approach things creatively. And the fact that you are willing to embrace lease options so quickly blows me away, because I've never understood why people don't. And it's one of those, it's like hearing somebody say that they also love that crazy, quirky movie no one else likes, right? It blows me away to hear someone say it, because I always get people making faces at me when I talk about lease options.
Well, I think that's because people just don't understand it. It's, as adults, when we come across a word we don't understand, we just skip it. We don't really dig into it and see what's going on. And if people would look at it, I think they would see the benefit to it. I mean, I've had people, I've had deals go bad. I can see where people wouldn't like it. But I've had a $100,000 house. The lady gave me $40,000, and in 6 months she left. Then I got somebody else to give me $10,000.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different ways to make money. And I made about
in
$300
those cases,
a
you
month.
weren't the leaser, you were the seller.
No, I do sandwich leases. So I was doing
Gotcha.
a lease in and a lease out.
Okay.
And, so people will hear that lady's side and be like, oh, well, she was in a lease option and that woman took her money.
Well, she didn't exercise her option.
Yeah.
Right?
But people hear those stories and they don't hear it from the landlord or, I made a lot of money. Yeah, but I gave her the opportunity.
Yeah.
She walked away from it.
Yeah.
And if more people would hear that side of it, I think they would really understand it. And again, people want to overcomplicate what a lease option is. It's a fancy rental agreement, y'all.
Right.
And I'll tell you too, though, I'm going to be in California. Actually, it's funny, in October, teaching lease options to a small little group. Most of my students in California buy outside of California.
Yeah.
But then they use their, private money lenders, their big, friends making big California money to fund the deals in other parts of the country. So it all works together. Whether you're looking at big fancy stuff or you're just using big fancy money, it all works together.
Yeah. Well, that's cool that you're going to be doing a talk in California. When your schedule comes up, shoot me a message. I'll make sure to alert everybody that you're going to be around and make sure that they check you out. What do you find? And you mentioned them doing mostly investments out of California, which is kind of my strategy of potentially selling my property and then investing in your area. Well, not Knoxville, but the other areas in Tennessee that have sounded so sexy. Because I think opportunities there are ridiculous in terms of enhanced return on investment versus areas like my backyard where return on investment hovers down around 2 to 5% versus 10 to 20% depending on who you're talking to.
Goodness, I think we're getting cash on cash. We get 30 on our triplex.
That's amazing. That's awesome. And imagine if someone took that $1 million that they would have bought a house in California for, took it to your area and bought what? How many different units of that type could they buy for $1 million?
I paid $92,000 for a triplex that brings me $550 a month per unit.
Okay, so just round that to 10 different units and imagine making $5,050 or $5,500.
$550. So right at $1,600 a month.
Yeah. See, that's great, and you've diversified your investment. So if you get a 10% drop in your number of tenants occupying your property, that's just 10%, right? Whereas if you have it all in one property, suddenly 100% of your cash flow is gone until you get another tenant in there.
That's what I really like about the apartments, because I tried doing the house thing because that's kind of regular. Everybody knows a landlord that's got a couple hundred houses. But then I thought, wait a second, I'm hung. If nobody makes this payment, I got to come up with it. But if I had that triplex over there, which is cheaper than the houses I was buying, which is also one of the reasons I stopped buying houses. I was buying multifamilies cheaper than houses. I bought a 5-unit less than most of my houses. I bought an 11-unit cheaper than my most expensive house. I was like, I'm not buying any more houses.
Yeah. Well, the math is awesome on multi-units.
Oh, it's so beautiful. So beautiful.
Now, so let's talk about that one, the 11-unit. When you go in there, do you jump through any hoops in terms of thinking to yourself, all right, here's some ways to make this a much more attractive set of units? Is there things I need to do? And then you go for it? Or do you pretty much turn it around immediately and get it occupied?
This one we bought out of foreclosure. It was not on LoopNet. It was in Tennessee, we've got a little MLS for every 3 or 4 counties. Mm-hmm. And it was on like the wrong 3 or 4 county MLS and like nobody knew it was available. And so we just kind of swooped in and got it. We actually got it under contract. We were in apartment school, my husband and I, because he doesn't like houses. And I was like, we were dating. I was like, you're either going to like real estate or go find somebody else. Mm-hmm. Like that was the ultimatum.
You got to have standards, Whitney.
And he was like, all right, we'll do apartments. And I was like, okay, good. Because I've already bought 14 houses this year. I'm kind of bored. So we went to apartment school, and while we were there, we got the 11 and the 5 under contract that weekend, and everybody in class was like drooling over what we were getting. And so we figured we had a pretty good deal, and we've kept them since 2015. And
you haven't really had to invest any money really in remodeling or updating or modifying. They've really just been good performers without a whole lot of work.
I think they've pretty much had the same 8 tenants the entire time we've had them. Okay. They were rented when we bought them. And they've pretty well stayed rented the whole time we've had him. The guy that they went into foreclosure because a school teacher bought him and then pulled money out to rehab him.
Yeah.
And then didn't know what he was doing, and he lost him in foreclosure, and we just swooped in and got him. So they were pretty much rehabbed when we got him.
Yeah.
But the really cool thing was I had a house that was free and clear. So we pulled a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, on my house and used that money to buy all of our apartments. So I'm still in these deals with no money out of my pocket.
Yeah. Jeez, Whitney, that is freaking amazing. So I got to tell you, if you show up here in California, I would love to share the timetable of that. If folks want to find out more about where you're going to be, where you're getting on stage and talking to people about how you do things, where do you want to send them? Where should they go?
If you go to whitneynicely.com, there's a big pink button there that says watch this video or something. You got to drop your email, but that'll get you on my email list. And, I don't send out stuff every day. But the last big email batch I sent out, I'll tell you this, you might get a kick out of it. I was a guest on a gentleman's podcast, and he was less than respectful of me being a woman, really. And I think the interview lasted about 12 minutes, and it was very cut and dry, and I blasted him on my email list. So that's the kind of stuff I send out, not like spammy, buy my stuff.
Right. So see, now I'm intrigued, Whitney, and you've shared that little tidbit, but I want more. So what did he say that ruffled your feathers?
Well, first of all, he didn't like that I was talking about my mom because she was my inspiration to get into real estate. And the next thing he said was that I only had 19 apartment units, and he thought that was, just poo-poo. And not, because he's got people with thousands of units and they're doing all this stuff. Well, you know what? We didn't all start with thousands of units and a golden spoon in our mouth. No. Some of us started with 4 and then 10 and then 25 and then 100, we grew into this. And that's what I like. I feel like I'm a good, not just a beginner coach, but I am still new in this, that I remember what it was like to have, butterflies in my stomach going on a listing appointment,
right?
Or, a purchase and sale appointment. Some people that are coaching have been in it since I've been born, and they just cannot remember what it was like.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I love talking to folks like you is you're still very connected to the fact that there was a time when you had none of this. And granted, unlike a lot of other folks I've talked to, it was very recently. But what amazes me is the other folks I talk to. Now, I've since I've started doing interviews, and it's a relatively recent thing, I've had one interview where after the interview, I was like, I won't be sharing this. Well, and I actually had to say it to the person who was, I said, hey, I appreciate you coming out and doing it, but you really didn't give me a straight shot on what you actually were going to talk about. And my gut feeling here is that you're scamming people. So I told him I wouldn't be putting his and he was very upset. But it was that kind of a thing. There was so much bragging at the top end, and it just didn't hold water for me. But the extension of that, of what you're talking about, is so many people want to talk about the guys with thousands of units. Well, great, that's fine. That's one end of the path, right? If we're all on a path, is it helpful for me to only focus on the end point, or is it helpful for me to focus on those intermediate steps from when you had zero to for me, those first few deals, that point where you finally changed to a different kind of investing, like you evolved, right? You evolved in 4 or 5 different ways, just in what we've talked about. That's what's going to help people take the steps in their own lives. Not hearing you brag to me about how many thousands of units you have. That's going to be pointless, and it's probably going to make a lot of people want to go get a drink. So there's really no point. All right.
Well, that was an interesting interview anyway, but I've enjoyed this one very much.
Well, good. I'm glad we could step it up a little bit for you without any, because who doesn't love their mom? I mean, come on, really.
I don't know. She must not have hugged him enough when he was a kid.
I guess not. Just not enough love in that guy's life. I think that's a sad, sad thing. We'll all just have a moment of silence after the show for that poor podcast guy who had bad things to say about your mama. So unless you have got something else you think you just really should share with the audience, I think we've covered a really good swath of stuff here for folks to chew on and potentially reach out to you. Is there anything else you want to share before we go, or do you think we've made it?
Just keep going. If you're trying to get your first deal and you've been trying for 2 or 3 years, just keep going. Something's going to break. If you quit, ain't nothing going to happen. But keep going. If you're trying to get your 20th deal, keep going. Whatever it is, whatever you have your eyes set on, keep going towards it, because it's going to happen. Try it 2 or 3 different ways if you have to. Try it 2 or 3 different ways a day if you have to. Something is going to give. And if you'll just keep going, you'll get there.
I think that's great advice. Whitney Nicely making sure to remind all of us that persistence pays. Another thing we've talked about on the show, where even if you have to make 100 offers before you get the one, just keep going, because eventually you'll hit 100 and you'll get what you're looking for. Thanks again for joining us, Whitney. I really appreciate you spending so much of your valuable time with us.
Thank you. I've had a great time.
Thanks. And thanks to all of you for spending your valuable time with us. As always, I hope this has been far more valuable to you in terms of what you're walking away with versus the time that you've invested. Thanks again for listening, everybody. We'll talk to y'all next time.